This is HSC option 3, sports medicine, and the key idea is what role do preventative actions play in enhancing the well-being of the athlete. We're having a look at the syllabus dot point, sports policy and the sports environment, and the dash points are listed there. And the right-hand side syllabus student learn to is critically analyse sports policies, rules and equipment to determine the degree to which they promote safe participation. For example, the syllabus says examine the heat rules and the rugby union scrum rules. Now, first dash point is rules of sports and activities. One of the obvious reasons for having rules in sport is so that the game flows and it's interesting for both spectators and participants. Another crucial reason, however, is to keep players safe. In collision sports such as rugby league and AFL, there is considerable potential for injury. Illegal play adds to the risk of injury, just as you're seeing in this clip, and as a result, those codes have well-defined rules stating what constitutes dangerous play. Currently in rugby league and other contact sports, there has been an emphasis on the correct management of dealing with players who have suffered concussion. Players are now forced to leave the field and have to undergo a concussion test before they can return to the field. The shoulder charge is now banned in rugby league as a result of the number of head injuries that occurred as a result of that tackle. A cynic would argue that these recent changes in the rules are the NRL reacting to the fear of litigation, just like the headline says in this newspaper. They are worried that players in the future who have experienced health problems from repeated concussions will sue the NRL. The NRL argues that they have player welfare as their number one priority. Some sports have minimum protective gear requirements for the players, such as the hockey goalkeeper and the baseball catcher. They particularly have to wear covering around the face in crash helmet type protection, and these are to protect them from balls which in some instances can travel up to 160 kilometres an hour. A major problem in terms of injuries sustained playing sport in this country are injuries resulting from playing in hot weather, for example heat-related illnesses. Sports Medicine Australia has released some guidelines to give sporting organisations and athletes advice on competing in the heat. You can see these guidelines, they give recommendations on how to keep players safe. For example, number 3, games that are played in hot weather should be played in early morning or at night to reduce the risk of encountering stressful conditions. Number 4, clothing should be light coloured, lightweight and loose fitting and provide protection against the sun. Number 5, modifying warm-up. The warm-up should be reduced to minimise the increase in body heat and temperature before competition. That is the problem, because these are just recommendations and each sport is then left to decide on their own what rules they're going to introduce. What happens then is the ridiculous scenes you see at the Australian Open tennis each year, where players will often suffer heat-related illnesses in temperatures far exceeding 40 degrees. This is a quote from a recent newspaper article that appeared after the Australian Open, and it gives you some examples of what players suffered. They hallucinated and fainted, another player vomited, soles of players' trainers melted, and one quote from a Croatian player by the name of Ivan Dojic summed it up, who said he wondered whether he would die out there on the court.
Now the next dash point is modified rules for children. Now numerous sporting codes have specific rules that they apply for children that are different than what you'd see in the regular game that you perhaps see on TV. So for example in the NRL, the governing body has provided guidelines that schools and sporting clubs have a responsibility to follow to promote safe play. Now, this safe play code was developed to emphasise safety and good conduct on the field. Some of the examples where it's different from the game that you'd see on TV is what they call the tackle zone. That means tackles above the armpits are not permitted. So that means players are not allowed to grab hold of the jersey, for example, and sling them to the ground. Dangerous tackles are also not allowed. That's an example there is where the tackler will put his leg out to sort of sling the person carrying the ball over their leg. It's almost like in a tripping type motion, but that is not allowed in junior rugby league either. And one of the big ones is in the scrums. There's no pushing or pulling allowed in scrums, and that's to reduce the risk of any spinal injuries. Now, for this to actually be successful, it's really important that all parents, players, coaches and referees are familiar with the rules and actually promote this safe player code. Now, some other examples of modified rules in junior sport, it allows for it to be more enjoyable and safer. Examples include the actual changes to the actual playing field. So in junior netball, for example, the young grades play on grass, and that's just to avoid the falls that could occur on concrete type fields. In Kanga cricket, they use softer playing equipment. So, for example, the cricket bats and also the cricket ball is soft to try and avoid damage being hit by the cricket ball. In junior baseball, pitchers are only allowed to pitch a certain number of pitches. That is to keep their shoulder safe, because there's been some long-term damage for pitchers too young pitching too many times. In cricket, it's now compulsory for batsmen to wear the cricket helmet. Moving on to the next dash point, matching of opponents. So this is actually a big topic in rugby union and rugby league at the moment, where you'll get maybe in the junior years, so under 12s for example, you'll get maybe some big Islander or Polynesian type players, and they could be up to almost double the body weight of some of their opponents. So there has been some trialling of playing in weight divisions as opposed to age divisions. It seems actually like a no-brainer, but is it actually as simple and clear-cut as that? So what are the actual issues of, for example, of a 70-kilo 14-year-old boy playing against a 50-kilo 11-year-old boy? He has 3 years of maturity on that boy, probably likely to be more powerful as well. So the actual idea of playing in weight divisions does seem like a good idea on some levels, but it's not as clear-cut as it would seem. Now, there's already some sort of clear definition, because most sport is already defined on skill level. For example, on grading, so you already have 12As playing against 12As and 12Cs playing against 12Cs. That's an attempt to separate the ability level. The next dash point is the use of protective equipment. Now, protective equipment has been developed for many different sports to help to reduce injuries. Now, technology has also helped improve the safety of players. For example, the cricket helmet has made some impressive strides in technology where it's now almost bulletproof. Other examples of protective equipment include that it's compulsory now in some sports for players to wear mouth guards, shin pads, and then, as I talked about earlier, protective equipment for hockey goalkeepers, where they are required to wear pretty substantial protective equipment to keep them safe. Not all protective equipment is compulsory. In some sports, the use of protective headgear is not compulsory, but many players choose to wear it. So these recommendations are certainly to be worn during the games, but also in training also. The next dash point and final dash point is safe grounds, equipment and facilities. Now, some examples about keeping grounds safe is to have safe distances from trees and fences. So it may be necessary to put the sideline in a couple of metres from the fence or trees. It's important that grounds get inspected before games start to check for perhaps examples like glass on the field. Safe equipment, the goalposts that can be packed away, that's to stop children getting up during weekdays and swinging off the goalposts. There have been some unfortunate accidents there. So at most grounds now, the goalposts are packed away at the end of game day. Also, it's really important for padding, and it's compulsory now for padding to be put on goalposts at rugby league grounds to avoid collisions with the goalposts. Safe facilities, this seems like again a no-brainer, to have a good quality first aid room stocked with facilities, and also to have a clean and hygienic change rooms. So that's the end for this particular dot point. You can get more information at the website www.coachpdhpe.com.